Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to episode 2 of the Bow Nose podcast. Again, the show will be YouTube, and you can listen whatever platform that you get your podcast. So, before I get into the show, wanted to first say thank you. First episode in terms of numbers and clicks and shares and stuff like that did well over my expectations. So I appreciate you guys, subscribing, liking the show, rating it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. That really helps me out a lot. So I definitely am appreciative. Also want to wish you all another happy Thanksgiving. So hopefully you're able to travel, see family, stuff like that. But I want this show, as mentioned before, the goal is always to be 30 minutes or less. So I'm going to try and stick to that structure this week. Last week went over by about 8 minutes. But I would say that's due to the fact that, I did an introduction, spoke a little about myself, and that's just not going to happen every week. So should be good to go with the 30 minutes this time. But on the docket today for the show, talk about Aaron Rodgers, his return to practice, coming back from his Achilles injury. I tore mine around the same time, so wanted to talk about some of the similarities of like what I'm feeling and kind of what I'm trying to picture he's going through as he returns back to practice, even though athletic wise and just in general, we are nowhere in comparison. So not trying to do that, but definitely know kind of the process and kind of what he's going through. Talk about the Bears Vikings Monday night thriller, if you would to call it that, and talk about Justin Fields' future a little bit. And then lastly, want to go over all of the college football conference championship games this weekend and how that can definitely impact. There's just a lot of implications on the line in terms of the college football playoffs. There's only 4 spots available. There's around 7 teams that could get into the college football playoffs. So I'm going to go over all the major conference championship games, my thoughts. If you want to bet on them, I'm going to give my thoughts of, what I'm going to bet on this weekend. And then lastly, end with, as always, the NFL picks of the week. So I finished 2-1 last week. The Patriots let me down. So they are now on my do not bet list. So Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi, Malik Cunningham, whoever they start this weekend, definitely on my do not bet list. So let's get right into it. So, talking about Aaron Rodgers. So, Aaron Rodgers has been cleared to come back to practice. He's on like a 21-day window with the Jets. So, you've seen videos all over, Instagram or Twitter or whatnot of him throwing around, dropping back and throwing a little bit. And a lot of people that have not had this type of injury before are saying that, wow, this is kind of a miraculous thing and all of that stuff, which a lot of what he's doing is there's, but overall it's not super groundbreaking into the fact of it's not impossible. Or I think he's kind of trying to portray that he's just different than everybody else and he's defying the laws of science and all of that, which there is a little bit of truth to that. He's definitely surpassing expectations of most doctors and other videos that I've watched and research that I've done. But it is a lot easier that it's his left foot instead of his right foot. So he's a right-handed quarterback, and with your left foot, there's just not as much load on your front foot when you're throwing. So it's really just about stability. So I've thrown footballs my whole life. Played football, baseball, dodgeball player. So I throw a lot. So in comparison to me, I tore my right Achilles around the same time. I think I did mine a week earlier in August than he did. So our comebacks are drastically different because of the fact that mine was my right foot, and that's where you push off of and get a lot of your throwing power. And there's just a lot more, plantar flexion and just weight bearing on your right foot. So in terms of him standing and throwing with shoes on, weeks ago, that's not super historic or groundbreaking because there's just not as much weight that is being placed on your front foot as you're throwing a football. Uh, not trying to diminish anything that he's doing. Obviously, he has way more time to dedicate to rehabbing, which makes a ton of sense. So that's another reason why everything's been accelerated. We've also had two different surgeries. So I had the pretty typical surgery of where you bring the top part of the Achilles where it ruptured, marry it to the bottom part and kind of suture it from that point to, and then, the bond kind of reforms through, PT and just time, right? So he had a different surgery. Cam Akers has also had this surgery. I think J.K. Dobbins has also had this surgery. Not sure what Kirk Cousins is doing, but they've had a technique called the speed bridge. The goal of the speed bridge is to accelerate the recovery and allow weight bearing earlier, so then that can accelerate the healing process. So again, I'm not a doctor or of any kind, but the videos that I've seen of the speed bridge technique, it basically just takes the top part and like brings it down, um, down under the other one, and then uh, it is like anchored down on the bone. They drill into the bone in your heel a little bit to anchor that down, just so when it heals, it just heals faster. I can post links in the description of some videos that I've seen about it. But yeah, it does allow weight bearing quicker. When I had surgery on my Achilles, I couldn't weight bear for the first 4 weeks post op. So first 2 weeks I was virtually in bed the entire time, and then when if I had to go to the bathroom or I traveled to Kansas City, I think around the 10th day after surgery I had to use crutches. So I had like uh, a hands-free crutch. It looked like a peg leg for those who know me personally. They've seen me hobble around in it. So I had that, and couldn't weight bear, walk on my own, do anything really for the first month. And then as in month 2, then I transitioned into a boot, and then I had heel lifts in my boots, and then my foot kind of sat down at an angle just to keep the Achilles raised a little bit. Aaron Rodgers has experienced some of that, but he was able to weight bear much quicker. And he had some special shoes that had a heel lift in it to where he could walk around without crutches much earlier and just accelerate that process. So um, I'm excited for him to come back. He's one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch, especially now that he doesn't play for Green Bay. As you guys know, I'm a Bears fan, so watching him on the Packers torture my teams for years has not been great. So I am excited for him to come back. Um, I am a little worried, personally. I think from a mental aspect, I think about frequently when I return back to sports how scary that's gonna be. I think, backpedaling and jumping and some of the stuff that I'm doing in PT right now, like, box step ups, full body calf raises and squats it's scary to me as I do them. So I can't even imagine what he's thinking in terms of, 300-pound men chasing him around and trying to tackle him and, getting hit for the first time, kind of like he did when he snapped his Achilles before. I think that's going to be, got to be mentally jarring, but he's different. So, I'm rooting for him. I definitely hope he doesn't, re-tear it, knock on wood, stuff like that. Cam Akers, obviously a running back, came back after 5 months. Running back is definitely a more demanding position in terms of, the physical aspect. You're doing a lot more cutting, you're hit a lot more, stuff like that. And he's been great up until I think he did get injured again, unfortunately. But I don't think it was the same Achilles, but I think he unfortunately, ruptured his other Achilles. But from the throwing aspect, dropping back and throwing without, worrying about being hit. I don't think that that's too groundbreaking right now for him to return back to practice. But just not sure, the inconsistencies of, a pocket. How is that going to look if he has to step up or make quick movements in the pocket? What if he gets caught in awkward positions? I'm just kind of thinking this as a quarterback, the different scenarios he could be in. But we'll see how it goes, see if he returns. I think he really wants to return more so to, prove that he is different and he can come back from this sooner. So, I'm excited to see if he does. So let's move on to the Bears Vikings game and Justin Fields' future. I feel bad as a Bears fan that the national audience had to sit there and watch the Bears and the Vikings play. I like watching Justin Fields play no matter what. I like the Bears watching the Bears no matter what, but it was very much an ugly game. So, kind of like the Celtics Bucks game that I did last week on the show, as I was watching this game, I just have my notepad out on my phone and I'm just taking notes throughout the game. And then I kind of just explain what I was thinking while I was taking these notes. So, um, I'll just go down the list. So I had first Justin Fields' escapability first drive turned 2 plays into positive plays. So what I mean by that is early on, there's 2 plays almost, I want to say they were back to back to where there was just pressure immediately, and he had to escape the pocket, delivered 2 nice balls down the sideline. Or sorry, 1 ball down the sideline, and then another one kind of like a sidearm action past the defender to Roshan Johnson, both for first downs. That's just escapability that you just can't teach, and what makes Justin Fields special. Uh, the next thing I wrote is Cole Kmet greater than Brock Bowers. I want to say that I meant that in terms of importance right now. There's been a lot of tweets or things I've been reading in the media connecting Brock Bowers and mock drafts to the Bears, which I wouldn't hate it if the Bears drafted Brock Bowers. I mean, he's an exceptional talent. For those who don't know, tight end out of Georgia, phenomenal talent. Some say generational in terms of the tight end position, kind of like a Gronk or a Tony Gonzalez. Those types of tight ends, Travis Kelsey, those types of tight ends. In terms of need, do we need him with how well Cole Kmet has been playing? I'm not sure, but something to think about. When Aaron Hernandez, before he got in trouble, him and Rob Gronkowski playing together, the two tight end set, I think that was a great look for the Patriots, and the offense was very efficient during that time. And it helps attack the middle of the field when you have two dynamic tight ends. So I think it's possible. I wouldn't hate it. Do we need it? Do we have more needs than that? Yes. But, Cole Kmet has been great. Montez Sweat has been a difference maker since we acquired him from Washington. He already has 2.5 sacks in 4 games that he's played. And outside of those sacks, just constant pressure on the quarterback and allowing the other defensive linemen to feast as well. So you've seen the defensive line pressure move in a positive direction, like drastic improvement over the last 4 weeks. And that is directly because of Montez Sweat. So loved that move by Ryan Poles, loved when it happened. And I'm glad it's, working out how I think he intended. Next thing I have is, again, we got to talk about the good. We got to talk about the bad with Justin Fields as well. So I do have some negatives in here as well. So he misses too many wide open throws still. And, by now, year 3, you should be hitting those layups. You shouldn't miss layups at this time. He missed Darnell Mooney down the sidelines, and I can tell by Darnell Mooney's body language, he is getting a little frustrated by some of the wide open throws Justin is missing to him. I don't know if it's just like a mental thing. I remember playing infield. There was just certain first baseman that I could just not throw to, and it was just a mental thing. So I don't know if there's like some I can't say that that's probably yips involved in terms of Justin throwing the Darnell Mooney. I'm sure but there's something going on there to where for whatever reason they're just not connecting. And I feel bad for Darnell Mooney because I do think that he's a great player and he's just kind of had a down year, but not necessarily his fault. Next thing, Luke Getsy's play calling is horrible. I wish they would have left him in Minnesota. I'm over it. There's just no way that if you keep Matt Eberflus, you cannot keep Luke Getsy. There's just no way that you could bring him back and take yourself seriously as a franchise and say that you're trying to move forward. He's a detriment. It's been proven. I'm over it. We got to do something different. Average yards per attempt in the first half was zero 0.8 yards. I'm going to show you guys the passing chart of Justin Fields from this game for those who are watching this on YouTube, and just the amount of throws behind the line of scrimmage. You would think this is like a middle school to a below average high school passing chart. Next thing, Justin Fields ball security. This is not a new thing. However, 6 fumbles this year, and he's had 34 career fumbles. That is almost a fumble a game. It might be 35 fumbles, but either way, it's averaging to about a fumble a game, and you just can't have that. Now, not all of those are lost fumbles, obviously, but those are some red flags that Justin Fields really needs to pay attention to ball security, especially late in games. How many times have we seen Justin Fields fumble late in games from a sack, trying to keep his eyes downfield, which obviously he should, but not feeling the pressure enough to where, that inner that clock inside your head goes off and you got to take off or cover the ball or protect the ball first. Um, that being said, after those 2 fumbles that he had, to come back and have the composure to come back and just wash that away and have short-term memory in terms of coming back and throwing that absolute dot to DJ Moore down the middle of the field, on 3rd down when we really needed it. And now casuals on Twitter, I see this all the time to where, why doesn't Justin Fields throw down the middle of the field more? Well, I will tell you, it's because our interior line is horrendous. And almost every time Justin snaps the ball to drop back, our center, uh, our center for sure gets blown up almost every play. We need to address the center position in the offseason, whether it's via draft or trade or something. Find him at a grocery store, something. Uh, the center position is just not good enough. Gets blown up every play. If the left guard or the right guard get blown up, it's just instant pressure in Justin Fields' face to where he can't look down the middle of the field or step up in the pocket because the pocket is collapsing right in front of him. So he has to get outside, whether that be rolling out to his right, which would most likely happen because he's right-handed, or spinning around and trying to work left. But that more times than not, when that happens, he gets blown up by the left side if the left tackle gets beat. And then, that's where some of the fumbles that you've seen in videos are caused. It's not necessarily because the left and right tackle, because I think those positions are actually probably more of our better positions on the offensive line, especially Darnell Wright. And it all starts with the center and making sure our guards are better than what they are now. Um, 46% of the throws at or behind the line of scrimmage. We talked about the zero 0.8 yards per attempt, which is just disgusting, right? Got to do better than that. Now, people are like, yes, that's on Justin Fields, but that's really the game plan. The Vikings, they blitz 60% of the time, so that's part of the reason why that game plan was in place. But even when the Vikings blitzed, think about this in terms of growth for Justin Fields. Every time when the Vikings blitz, which was 60% of the time, he went 16 to 31, 132 yards, and 8 first downs on those blitzes. And he had a 91.8 passer rating. And that's growth. So when you're evaluating moving into next year, if he's going to be your starter moving into next year, you have to take things like that into consideration. His yards per attempt, that's not on him. That's Luke Getsy's game plan, right? And that's a game plan, specifically because of the fact that the Vikings blitz a lot, so you don't have time to have longer developing plays downfield, especially when your center gets blown up virtually every play. So I'm showing his passing chart, and then we're going to move on because I got a lot of college football stuff to get into. But this is his passing chart here. So as you can see, yes, a bunch down at or behind the line of scrimmage, right? And not a lot, down the field past 10 yards, right? But if you look at Justin Herbert's passing chart as well, Justin Herbert, uh, obviously, more advanced in his career than Justin Fields is, and obviously just a better player right now. But the game plan was pretty similar in terms of a lot of screen passes because the Vikings just do blitz a lot. Now, the difference between Justin Herbert and Justin Fields is Justin Herbert threw 3 touchdowns and he threw for 400 yards. So again, that's Justin Herbert right now being a better player than Justin Fields. But in terms of game plan, they're similar because of what the Vikings do defensively. So, moving on, though. So I want to get back to college football. So the college football playoffs, the conference championships are this weekend. Actually, I'm recording this on Friday, December 1st. So Oregon and Washington actually play tonight. So I'm going to go through, the Power 5 conference championship games and then give my prediction of, who's going to actually make the playoffs. So starting with the Pac-12, got Oregon and Washington. This is a rematch game. Washington got the better of Oregon earlier this year. I think Oregon's been pissed off about this ever since then because I think that they let that one get away. So the spread right now is -9.5 in Oregon's favor. And I do think that they win, and I do think they win convincingly and cover the spread. Michael Penix has not looked like himself. We think that he's, dealing with some injuries, but over the last 6 games, dealing with some hiccups. Over his last 6 games, he's had a huge dip in QBR, and his completion percentage has gone down by 13% in those last 3 games or last 6 games. So if Washington's going to win this game, they do have to run the ball, and they have to keep Bo Nix's offense off the field. However, I don't think that happens, and I do think Oregon wins by 10. And I think it's pretty convincing. And I think Washington's been a little overrated all year. And I kind of think that Oregon finally exposes Washington for who they are. So I think I think Washington covers. So I'm taking Oregon, minus the points. I think they cover. Moving on to the Big 12, Texas, Oklahoma State. This not what we thought was going to be for the Big 12, but Texas is favored by 15.5 points. Now, look, Oklahoma State, it's a great story. I'm glad that you're here. They were picked 7th in the preseason Big 12 poll, but this is not going to be close. If you look over Oklahoma State's year this year, they have lost to the likes of South Alabama and UCF by a combined 78-10 scores. So they played BYU close this year. Texas, as a common opponent, beat the shit out of BYU. So overall, Oklahoma State's best player is their running back, and Texas's defensive line is probably the best in the country. So I just don't see a lot of avenues to where Oklahoma State is going to make this competitive. Now, it all really boils down to Texas's mindset. I think they're going to be super motivated because they are playing for a playoff spot. They need to win convincingly, and they need to hope for, Florida State to lose. Trying to think. Oh, yeah. Basically, Florida State to lose, Georgia to lose, maybe. I'll get into, the other scenarios in a second. But I think Texas wins this easily. I think they cover the spread of 15.5 easily. I think they win by 3 touchdowns. So I would take Texas minus 15.5. Moving on to the SEC. Georgia, Alabama. Georgia is favored by 5.5 points. And this one's pretty cut and dry. The winner of this goes to the college football playoff, in my opinion. They're not going to keep the SEC champion out of the college football playoff. It's just not going to happen. Also, between Georgia and Alabama, they are winners of 8 of the last 14, national championships. So this is a playoff game. A lot of more times than not, this is the national championship game. And Alabama runs the ball well. I think Jalen Milroe might struggle against Georgia's secondary. Georgia's secondary is really good. So I'm not sure in terms of throwing the ball, Jalen Milroe, who, he's been a lot better as of late, but they're going to have to run the ball effectively in order to have a chance against Georgia. They have to control the time of possession. However, I think Georgia wins. I think they kind of shut Nick Saban up. You already know Nick Saban has been kind of campaigning for a way for Alabama to get in over Texas if they both win. And I think Georgia is just going to slam that door, and I think that they cover. So take Georgia minus 5.5. Moving on to the Big Ten, Michigan and Iowa. I don't know why this game is even played, personally. Iowa's really bad, and Michigan is really good. I had my reservations about Michigan early on this year just because of strength of schedule, stuff like that. But then they played great against Ohio State. Ohio State would be favored against all of these teams except for probably Georgia and Michigan that I'm mentioning or I'm about to mention. So for them to be Ohio State, I think that's just a statement for Michigan, especially not having Jim Harbaugh for the last few games because of, the sign stealing, debacle. So a loss here by Michigan would be catastrophic. And I just can't imagine it happening. The Hawkeyes defense is very much above average. So the Hawkeyes defense is very good. Iowa's defense is generally pretty good. They're just an ugly football team every single year. However, their offense might be statistically the worst offense Iowa has ever had. And that is saying a lot because I've been to many Wisconsin-Iowa games, and it is some of the most dreadful football to watch live, in person, on TV, just period. So The only way Iowa even has the slightest chance of making this a competitive game and for them to have a chance in the end is if they turn Michigan over multiple times and they have to have some sort of defensive score, whether it be, a fumble return, an interception return, maybe even a kickoff or a punt return. Someone other than the offense has to score a touchdown for Iowa to even remotely think about covering the spread, which is Michigan minus 21 and a half, and for them to even have a chance to win. Obviously, I don't think this is going to happen. I think Michigan wins. I don't think that they cover, though, simply because Iowa is going to ugly this game up. And I just don't think that from a time of possession standpoint, I just don't think Michigan is going to have the ball enough to cover 21 and a half points. I think they win by 3 touchdowns and they win by 21. And then, bettors will get kind of screwed by that half a point. Lastly, my FSU Seminoles versus Louisville. FSU is favored by 2.5 points. Now we know Jordan Travis is out because he unfortunately broke his leg. Tate Rodemaker also might be out with a concussion. So if that is the case, Brock Glenn is going to have to step in. However, that all being said, if FSU wins, they should be in. If you have an undefeated Power 5 conference championship or a conference champion, they should be in the college football playoff. Or why do you even have it? Um, that being said, this is going to be a tough game for Florida State. Jack Plummer, Jack Plummer is solid. The running game is solid. Their coach, Jeff Brom, has 4 wins against top 10 competition. So they're going to have their team ready. However, even though we may be on our third quarterback in Brock Glenn, bless his heart, FSU still has Trey Benson, one of the better running backs in the league and in the country. We still have Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson, one of probably a top 3 or top 4 wide receiver duo in the country, right? And in terms of defense, we still have Jared Verse, right? One of the best pass rushers in the country, probably is going to be a top 10 pick. And overall, our secondary has been outstanding all year. We rank 3rd in QBR against and in the country. So our secondary has always been solid. It's more so, can we stop the run? Can we get off the field in 3rd down? Are we going to be able to run the ball effectively? And if Brock Glenn does play, can we limit those turnovers? However, I think I placed a bet not betting on Florida State, betting on Louisville to win, but my heart thinks that FSU is still going to win sometime or somehow, and we're going to win by a field goal, and we're going to cover. So my college football playoff picks, who I think are going to win or make it to the playoff, I do think Georgia gets in. I think Michigan gets in. I think FSU gets in, and then unfortunately for Texas, I do think Oregon gets in. However, if Florida State loses, then I would look at Georgia, Michigan, Oregon, and Texas. So that's who I think is going to get in. My guys on the cookout, Eris and Adam, they are Texas fans. So if FSU does lose, I do hope Texas gets in. All right, so I'm running on 2 minutes left before hitting the 30-minute mark. So I want to give my last my NFL picks of this week. Last week I went 2-1. So the 3 picks that I have this week, I have the Chargers minus 5.5 over the Patriots. Patriots don't know who they're starting. I could be starting for the Patriots this weekend. And Brandon Staley is coaching for his life. So I think the Chargers come in focused and they cover. The Packers, I have them +6 over Kansas City. The Packers are hot right now. They just beat Detroit. They beat the Chargers. The Packers run game is above average. Kansas City's run defense is below average. So I think they control the clock. And if Jordan Love can limit turnovers, then I think, I take Packers +6. Dolphins for my last pick. I do have the Dolphins minus 9.5 over Washington. Washington has been abysmal over the last 2 games, getting blown out. They've also lost 3 straight, and Miami is just simply humming right now. So I think Tyreek Hill, Tua, and company, they take care of business and they cover 9.5 in Washington. I looked at the weather for all these games. The weather is going to be solid. That's not going to be a factor. So I do think my picks: LA Chargers minus 5.5 over the Patriots, Packers +6 over Kansas City, and the Dolphins minus 9.5 over Washington. Those are my 3 picks. I got about 30 seconds left. So again, I want to say thank you for tuning in. The show will be available on YouTube, and any podcast platform. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio. Still working on Amazon Music, so I lied. Not every platform, but we'll get on Amazon Music probably by this weekend. So show will be live later tonight. Other than that, I hope everyone has a good weekend, and I will talk to you guys soon. All right. See ya.